Hi, welcome back to the PHP Virtual World tutorial series. In this video, we will cover HTTP requests. And this is a technique for interfacing with PHP and other database documents outside of the virtual world without the use of media prims. So I'm using the Imprudence viewer right now, and as you can see over here, I cannot see this media prim. This is one of the disadvantages of the Imprudence viewer that the Viewer 2 allows you to have access to, but not all viewers are always going to have media prims, so you have to take that into consideration. And this is one way to still use your PHP technology inside the virtual world without the use of media prims. And this is going to involve scripting. So as you can see, I just have a basic block here on the ground, and I've added a new script to it. And if I take a look, open this script up, it is basically a simple demonstration of how the HTTP request function works. This is the key function that we're focusing on here, and the other stuff is kind of just demonstrating this basic example how it works. In this case, I'm going to show you guys how to make an attendance box. This is a box that when you click it, it would add the person's name to the database if it's not already in the database. So this would allow for someone holding a meeting to say, everyone click the box to make sure you signed in and I know everyone's here, and everyone just has to click the box and it stores all the names in a database. If you try to click the box more than once, then it does not accept the data. So I'll go briefly through what all this is doing. I'm assuming you're familiar with scripting before you start this video, and you know what things such as the key variable is, and what are strings, and even how to use things such as touch start. If you don't know how to use HTTP response or LLHTTP requests, it's okay, because that's what this video is going to be going into. Just make sure you're familiar with LL functions in general. So let's get started. As you can see here, this is going to be accessed similar to the same way that we did our other save function. As you remember, last time we did a PHP underscore save.php. And that was the save function we used. It looks similar to this one here. This is the one I have modified for the HTTP functionality. And basically, the old save function was just this part here that I have highlighted. So as you can see, I've added a number more things, and basically what I've added is the checking here to see if the name is already in the database. You just want to ignore it so you don't have a bunch of duplicates in your file, which makes it a lot more simpler. So if someone's going through to make sure everyone's there, you don't want someone who happened to click the box 3 or 4 times to appear in the list 3 or 4 times. So this is just a simple way to get rid of that. Now we'll go ahead back and start with the HTTP request. Okay, so basically what I have here is you just go from default, and I don't have a state entry in this one because I don't have anything that needs executed in state entry, but you can just leave a blank state entry if you prefer it to be more readable in that format. But I just simply have the touch start function as my first event. So this event, I'm sure you have had a brief overview of. If not, it basically is triggered when the user clicks on your object. So as soon as someone clicks on my box over here, it will trigger this function. And basically what I have it doing is this LL detected name finds out who was the person that clicked the box, and it returns the name of that person. So for me, it would return my avatar's name, Tyler Fitzhands. So that's pretty simple, and it just saves it as a string. Now for the HTTP request. What I have here is the HTTP request is returning an ID of the actual request. So this is it's not really all that important. It's basically just going to be used down here to make sure that if you have multiple requests going at once, that you're dealing with this action from this specific request. You just want to make sure that this requested ID matches the one from up here. If not, then you'd be messing with different requests and it wouldn't add up completely. And I had to declare this as a global variable because otherwise the referencing in the touch start would not follow through into the HTTP response event. So by having it as a global variable, it can be accessed both here and here. So basically, this HTTP request is just simply sending the form data as we had before. So as you remember, we use forms with the submit button, and what the submit button would do is it would basically call your browser with the exact address of whatever we put in. As you remember before, we put in the address of we simply just put in php_save.php, but it knew that it was in this directory, so it was already just carried over. But in this case, we don't have that advantage to say, oh, it already knows it's working in this area, just continue with the HTTP save. We have to specify the full address, which you can see here. So this is the function that you just saw here. This is the PHP code that I wrote for this particular function. It's very similar to the save. In fact, the highlighted part is the exact save function from before. Just copied almost word for word. I changed around the variable name. Instead of having a first name and a last name, I'm just sending one string called name. So I didn't think it was necessary to try to separate first and last when we can just send it all at once. So in this case, this question mark represents a variable, and that's how when you use the submit button from the HTML, it basically sends it in the GET format. It just puts it up in your browser bar. You'll notice it has all the variables that you sent, and it's just this starts with a question mark followed by the variable name. So whatever the variable that you want to get, this variable here, you just put a question mark followed by that variable's name. So question mark name is what I have, and then you just set that equal to the whatever you want the value of that variable to be in your code here. So whatever you set the value to there, this will be the value that you get from your PHP code. So in this case, I am using name, which I am concatenating with the plus symbol to the string of the HTTP request. So this all becomes one big long string, and as you can see up here before, the name string is the name of my avatar due to this LL function. So this is a very simple way to simply add the name of the avatar to get sent to the PHP function, which is very useful for a number of reasons. Now there's a set of parameter lists which you can use, like different things such as the post method, and there's other things, but I'll let you look into that on the wiki page if you really want to. It's under the functions, and the HTTP request function will have the information you want, and you can see here several of the different list parameters, and you just put it within the brackets. You'll start with the flag, and then you'll put a comma, and then you'll have the value type, which can change the HTTP method and a number of other parameters, which we won't really mess with in this specific tutorial. It's more advanced stuff, and it's not really necessary to get the full functionality, but you can very simply just use it like this. And finally, we'll just leave the body blank. It doesn't really add any additional information for us right now, so we'll just leave this string completely blank. It represents the contents of the request, but we are sending our contents as a PHP parameter through the question mark, as I showed before. So we can just ignore that part as well and just leave it blank, which makes it pretty simple. We do need this part at the end, but it doesn't really affect anything for us. This is the key part that we're focused on. And of course you close your function and end it with a semicolon, and this is what will be executed whenever you touch the object due to the touch start event. And every time you call the HTTP request function, it receives a response from the PHP. So this will be anything that you echo back to the screen. So if there was an error and it was unable to open the file, that would be sent back. And if you echoed that the data was received, that would be the message you received back. And I also have a separate case here where if the data was found to be already in the database, I go to this else statement and I simply tell them that the entry is already in the database. So that way they know that they're already been submitted and they don't need to resubmit their specific data.